There's this house in Dublin, Ireland, with a railway track in front of it and a cemetery at the back end. Just a monotonous, boring looking house with nothing special happening in it. However, when this house was listed as a rental property, hundreds of people showed up to look at the house. This is not uncommon in Dublin. Ireland, which is one of the richest countries in the world with GDP per capita of $114,000, it struggles with its housing. And at the same time, there's been a huge increase in the number of people who are homeless within Ireland. In today's video, we break down how Ireland became one of the richest countries in the world, and at the same time, we look at if other countries in the world could follow in its footsteps and learn from it and grow and not be poor anymore. Nobody likes to be poor. So let's get started.
Foreign capital has been brought in a big way, and a Dutch firm have found the blueprint for success in their expanding shipyard.
In 2022, the pandemic's impact on the economy combined with the Ukrainian war that was going on in Europe, it was expected that both of these will lead to the European Union suffering a minor recession, if not a major one. However, in the last quarter of 2022, European Union grew at an astonishing number of 0.1%, which is a very small number in case you didn't get the sarcasm. This was all thanks to one country by the name of Ireland. You see, Ireland's economic output was so great that it single-handedly prevented the entire European Union from going into a recession. Just for further clarity, 5 million people living in Ireland produced more than what 343 million people living in Europe could produce within that year. That's how impactful the Irish economy is. Using the same year, the big economies like Germany were struggling with their budgets. They had deficits that they couldn't account for. At the same time, Ireland had a surplus. They had too much money to know what to do with it. At the making of this video, that is in the August of 2023, Ireland has the third highest GDP per capita, that is $114,000, which wasn't always the case. Just go back about 30 years back and Ireland's just a poor, broke economy. So how did they do this? In order to understand that, we have to look at its history. For about 700 years, the Irish were ruled by the British Empire. During the rule of the country, not much was done to develop its industry, educational institutions, or to even prepare Ireland for self-governance one day. All the economic policies imposed by the English were made to serve the needs of England instead of Ireland. The economy of Ireland was no different than any other colony of the British Empire. The economy just existed to serve the empire. There was no other purpose it had. And it was under the British rule the country saw a famine that killed about 1 million people. This famine accelerated the brain drain the country was already suffering in the 19th and the 20th century. Tens of thousands of people left Ireland for better future elsewhere. You can find Irish people in practically every country, North America, Australia, South America, and Brazil. They're everywhere. The population went from about 8 million in year 1841 to 4 million by the time of independence in 1921. That is practically half the population left behind. Even today, the population of Ireland is just over 7 million, with 5.1 million living in Republic of Ireland and 1.9 million living in Northern Ireland. Now, Northern Ireland is a story of its own, and its economy and everything deserves a video of its own. So in this video, we'll mostly be focusing on Republic of Ireland. The number of people leaving Ireland was so huge that about 80 million people in today's day and age have Irish ancestry. 36 million of them are in America alone. That is a big number for a country with about 7 million people in it today. So in 1921, after a bloody war, Ireland got its independence from Britain. The economy wasn't looking good, with practically no industries and an ever-decreasing population that was heavily dependent on agriculture. The journey of Ireland's economy is one of trial and error and finally reaching the place it is in today. The economy of the country can be divided into three phases. The first one is from 1920 to the late 1950s. At the time of independence, most of the people and the politicians in Ireland believed in a firm government control over industries and the economy. It was believed that if anything were to go south, where people are getting unemployed or a recession comes, the government should be able to assist the people and make sure people don't die. Not another repeat of the famine from 1800s. Another thing that was popular at the time was socialism. At the time of independence, if Ireland was looking at both the West and the East, Soviet Union was kicking ass. It was the king of the world, highly industrialized and seemingly untouched during the Great Depression. Meanwhile, the capitalistic world was struggling. Just look at America and the Great Depression it went through. In the first phase of the economy, anything that would go bankrupt within the country, the government would come swooping in, saving all the jobs, bailing this company out, and then turn this company into a government entity. The government owned about 100 different companies by 1970s, all running at losses, making them no money. In the first phase of its economic history, Ireland learned what the rest of the world knows today. Self-reliance, nationalism, and protectionist policies do not work. So by the late 1950s and early 1960s, the government was ready to pivot. And that is what began the phase two of the Irish economy. As a result, the second phase of Irish economy starting from 1960s, lasting up until 1980s. The government went from being socialist towards being capitalistic. Similar to what we saw happening to the Indian economy in 1990s, a link in the description, shameless plugin, is what was happening in Ireland. During this phase, Ireland achieved mainly two things. The first one was the establishment of Industrial Development Authority, or IDA. This was a government body established in order to attract foreign direct investment, something Ireland needed desperately. The second beneficial thing that happened during this phase was the aid and grants that were provided by the European Union, helping Ireland survive and develop its economy. However, during this phase, not a lot was going in Ireland's favor. You see, these reforms helped Ireland go from being an agro-based economy towards a service-based economy. But it was still not thriving or anything. It wasn't the richest economy whatsoever. You see, between 1960s and 1980s, the country faced one crisis after another. From massive strikes that brought the country to a halt to the oil crisis of 1970s, which impacted practically all countries across the globe. And the biggest issue Ireland faced during this time was unstable governments with poor economic policy. It was finally in the third phase, that is 1990s onwards, that Ireland goes through a economic reform like no other. It was finally in the 1990s that Ireland entered an economic phase known as the Celtic Tiger phenomenon. The country saw growth like never seen before. And this was done by promoting foreign direct investment and giving huge tax incentives, practically turning the country into a tax haven. Nowhere else were conditions better suited for business than in Ireland. Many big American companies like Dell, Intel, Apple, a whole bunch of them moved to Ireland because the conditions were just right. Now you may be like, bro, any country can do that. Just lower your taxes and you're rich. You don't have to suffer. Not so fast. You see, Ireland stood out from the rest of the countries for a few other reasons than just the tax incentives. Let's look at them quickly. You see, Ireland is practically in the middle between North America and Europe and offered a sizable skilled and English-speaking population, something most of the other European countries couldn't offer. Apart from Portugal, Spain, UK, like these countries are somewhat in the same proximity as Ireland, they are somewhat in the middle. But you see, Spain and Portugal don't have English-speaking population. Now, UK or United Kingdom could have benefited from these tax incentives as well. But you gotta keep in mind, UK was already a rich country with the labor force expecting rich people compensation. Meanwhile, Ireland had no such issues. Its labor force was ready to work at any given compensation. As far as any country that is out of Europe is concerned, they didn't stand a chance. You see, setting up a shop in Ireland or a European Union country would mean not paying the import duties that they would have had to if they were to move to any other country. So Ireland was just at the right place at the right time with the right economic policies which allowed it to grow as fast as it could. And man, did they grow. The GDP growth rates were crazy high, unemployment was crazy low, rising wages, and booming property market. The booming property market did go boom in 2008. However, the economy and the country had already changed by that time. The government, as a response of the 2008 crash, implemented a bunch of measures like cutting public spending and increasing taxes, and further international bailout stabilized the economy. This recession underscored the need of diversification and a need for focusing on innovation, research and development, and the knowledge economy. Since then, Ireland was forced to close some of the tax loopholes due to the increasing pressure from the European Union and the other countries. However, all these companies that had already set up shop in Ireland and had already invested so much in the country, they were going nowhere else. They've stayed and have contributed to the economy of Ireland. And in the last decade or so, the country has heavily emphasized on education and research and development. It has turned the country into a hub of technology companies and startups. Sustainable practices, renewable energy, and environmental consciousness have gained prominence, aligning it with the global trends. There has been an increase in income inequality combined with a steep increase in the cost of living. Country, especially the bigger cities, have two kinds of people. A bunch who are in fact living in the richest country in the world and making and spending a lot of money. Then there are some who are not directly employed by these big corporations and don't have high paying jobs. For them, the quality of life is reduced. It's this phenomenon of increasing wealth inequality that explains those massive lineups that we were discussing at the beginning of this video. There's a certain group of people who just can't afford housing in Ireland. Ireland is one of those countries that has leveraged its statistics and data in order to tweak and improve its economy and its country. So it would be quite interesting to see how Ireland deals with the increasing wealth inequality and the housing crisis. While these are big challenges that the country faces, but if there's any country that is capable and geared to solve it, it is Ireland. That's it for this video, and I'll see you in a week or two's time from now. Cheers, peace, bye. Economic ideas. That's not what I'm trying to say.